The wind had teeth that night. It scraped along the narrow street, rattling loose shutters and pushing snow into corners where it piled like forgotten secrets. Ethan Cole stood in his kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee gone cold, listening to the old house breathe. Pipes knocked softly in the walls. The clock above the stove ticked too loudly. He hadn't expected anyone to knock on his door. No one ever did anymore. Since his wife had died 3 years earlier, the world had slowly learned to pass him by. Neighbors waved politely. Parents at school pickup nodded. Conversations stayed safe and shallow. Ethan didn't blame them. Grief had a way of building invisible fences around people. His daughter, Lily, was asleep upstairs, curled beneath a pile of mismatched blankets, her brown hair fanned across the pillow. She had finally stopped crying herself to sleep every night. That alone felt like a fragile victory he didn't dare celebrate out loud. The knock came suddenly, sharp, urgent, and completely out of place. Ethan froze. Another knock followed, harder this time, knuckles striking wood with desperation rather than impatience. He set the mug down slowly and moved toward the door. His instincts, dulled by routine and exhaustion, flared awake. It was past midnight. Snowstorm. No phone call ahead. No familiar footsteps on the porch. He peered through the peephole. A woman stood there, hunched against the cold, her coat thin and soaked through. Snow clung to her dark hair and eyelashes. One hand pressed against her side as if holding herself together. Her eyes, wide, alert, terrified, lifted toward the door as if she could sense him watching. Ethan hesitated. Every caution he'd ever learned whispered at once. Don't open the door. Call the police. Wake the neighbors. Protect your child. The knock came again, weaker now. Please, a voice said, barely audible through the door. I just need one night. Ethan's hand hovered over the lock. He thought of Lily upstairs. Thought of the night his wife hadn't come home from work because a drunk driver had taken a curve too fast. Thought of how the world could change in a single moment of chance. He unlocked the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp and biting. The woman nearly stumbled forward, catching herself on the doorframe. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, late 20s, maybe. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue from the cold. There was something else, too, a tension beneath her fear, like someone constantly listening for footsteps that might not yet exist. I'm Ethan, he said, keeping his voice calm. You're safe for the moment, but I need to know, are you hurt? She shook her head quickly, then winced. Not badly. Just, please. I won't cause trouble. I just need somewhere they won't look. They. Her eyes flicked past him, toward the dark street. I can't explain. Not yet. Ethan considered closing the door again. Instead, he stepped aside. Come in, he said. But quietly. My daughter's asleep. Relief collapsed her shoulders. She slipped inside, snow melting onto the worn wooden floor. Ethan locked the door behind her, sliding the deadbolt into place with a final, heavy click. He handed her a towel. Kitchen's warm. Sit. She perched on the edge of a chair, hands trembling as she rubbed them together. Up close, Ethan noticed a faint bruise along her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve. He noticed how she kept her back straight, as if refusing to let herself appear weak. What's your name? He asked. After a moment, she said, Mara. Do you want me to call someone for you? Police? Hospital? No, the word came too fast. Please don't. Silence settled between them, thick but not entirely uncomfortable. The storm howled outside, a living thing throwing itself against the house. Ethan poured her a cup of tea, watching her hands slowly steady as the warmth seeped in. He didn't ask more questions. He'd learned, in the years since his wife's death, that sometimes people spoke when they were ready, and forcing it only made them retreat. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Mara stiffened instantly, eyes darting toward the ceiling. That's just my daughter, Ethan said gently. She sleepwalks sometimes. The tension in Mara's shoulders eased, but didn't disappear. They sat like that for a long time, listening to the storm. Eventually, Ethan showed her the small guest room at the back of the house. Clean sheets. A space heater humming softly. Nothing fancy, but safe. One night, he said. That's fine. She met his eyes, something fierce and grateful burning there. You don't know what you're doing. Probably not, he said honestly. But you needed help. He didn't see her smile, but something in her expression softened. Ethan slept lightly that night, waking at every sound. At one point, headlights swept briefly across the front wall, then disappeared. He lay still, heart pounding, until the house fell quiet again. Morning came grey and heavy with snow. Ethan was making pancakes when he felt it, that sense of being watched, not with threat, but with careful attention. He turned to see Mara standing in the doorway, hair damp from a shower, wearing one of his old sweaters. It hung loosely on her, but she looked warmer. More human. Lily padded in behind her, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Daddy," she whispered. "Who's she?" Ethan crouched beside her. "This is Mara. She needed a safe place for the night." Lily studied Mara seriously. Then she held out the rabbit. "You look sad. You can borrow him." Mara's breath caught. "Thank you," she said softly, accepting the toy as if it was something precious. "I promise I'll give him back." As they ate, the truth began to surface, not all at once, but in fragments. Mara wasn't just running from someone. She had witnessed something she wasn't supposed to. Documents. Names. Money moving in ways it shouldn't. Powerful people who didn't like loose ends. "They'll keep looking," she said quietly. "I won't bring that danger to your door again." Ethan listened, jaw tightening. He thought of Lily's small hand slipping into his. Thought of the quiet courage it took for someone to knock on a stranger's door when the world had turned hostile. "You're not leaving alone," he said finally. "There are ways to do this safely." By afternoon, the storm had eased. Ethan made calls, to an old friend from college who now worked far away, to someone he trusted without needing to say why. Plans formed carefully, deliberately. When it was time for Mara to go, she stood in the doorway, coat on, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. "But I wanted to." She hesitated, then said, "You protected me. You didn't even know who I was." Ethan glanced back at his house, at the light in the window where Lily waved goodbye. "Sometimes," he said, "that's the point." Mara stepped into the snow, disappearing down the street, no longer alone, no longer hunted in quite the same way. Ethan closed the door, locking it behind him, unaware that one small act of kindness would ripple outward, changing far more than a single night ever could. The lonely single dad opened his door for one night, not knowing who he was protecting. The wind was howling like something alive when Ethan Cole heard the knock. It was nearly midnight, and the small house at the edge of town was wrapped in darkness and snow. The storm had arrived without warning, thick flakes swirling under the yellow street lamp outside. Ethan stood in the kitchen, rinsing a plate, his mind half lost in routine. Since becoming a single father, routine was the only thing that kept the nights from growing too heavy. The knock came again. Loud. Urgent. Ethan froze. No one visited him at this hour. His friends knew better. The neighbors barely spoke to him beyond polite greetings. Ever since his wife died in a sudden car accident 3 years earlier, his life had narrowed to work, home, and his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Another knock, harder this time, followed by a faint voice carried through the door. "Please. I need help." Ethan's heart began to race. His first thought was Lily. She was asleep upstairs, clutching her favorite blanket, unaware of the storm or the danger that might be standing on the porch. Every instinct told him to stay quiet and call the police. But something in the voice stopped him. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't aggressive. It sounded desperate, frightened in a way that couldn't be faked. He walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. A woman stood outside, swaying slightly as the wind pushed against her. Snow coated her dark hair and shoulders. Her coat was thin, clearly not meant for weather like this. Her face was pale, eyes wide and alert, scanning the street as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. Ethan hesitated only a second longer before unlocking the door. Cold air rushed inside as he opened it. The woman stumbled forward, catching herself on the doorframe. "Please," she said again. "Just one night. I'll be gone by morning." Ethan stepped aside. "Come in." Quietly. She slipped inside, trembling as the warmth hit her. Ethan locked the door behind her and slid the bolt into place. Only then did he notice how badly her hands were shaking. "I'm Ethan," he said carefully. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No. Just cold. And tired." He handed her a towel and gestured toward the kitchen table. "Sit. I'll make some tea." As the kettle warmed, Ethan studied her from the corner of his eye. She couldn't have been older than 30. There was a faint bruise near her wrist, partly hidden by her sleeve.